No, he's just setting things up. He said, apologies for this afternoon.
Well, what did he do?
He didn't have a chance to, he was busy with other stuff. Didn't have a chance at 1 o'clock to do it.
Ask him if he wants a hot dog.
Are they ready? They're not nearly ready, are they?
Hot. I'm absolutely wet.
We'll take that top off. How are the rolls? Are they?
I'll be right with you guys. I'm just getting the text up.
Just getting it ready.
Hello, Rabbi.
Hello, I'm just getting up. Give me a moment.
Okay.
Good, John.
Hello, Dave. Hello, Ken. How are you?
Robin trying to phone. Robin. That's John Hyde. Behind a bushel.
Okay, there we go. Hi, everybody. Again, my apologies for missing out at lunchtime.
Hi, David. Hi, kids.
So we'll start in a
Robin's phoning on the other phone.
We're ready to roll. Thank you for joining us. Once again, hope it won't happen again. So we're beginning a new section. And before I begin, I must say that today, the 20th of Tevet, was the Rambam's Yom. So I felt even worse about missing it today, and I was determined we should miss out learning on his yard site. So a lot of activity around the world today on his yard site and on a daily basis. So here we go. A new HaChodesh, sanctifying the new moon. Subject. This section will get quite technical. This first chapter is quite straightforward and very interesting indeed. It's about the whole Jewish calendar, really. So he begins by saying there's one positive, that is to calculate, to determine, and to establish the day on which each of the months begin, and he'll explain in the following chapters. So we have to, it's Kiddush HaChodesh, not to be confused with Kiddush Levana, which we do in Shul today. Kiddush HaChodesh, declaring which day is Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the new Hebrew month. And this could only be done by the Jewish Supreme Court in Jerusalem in the day when they were functioning, is when our holy temple stood. Since there's no temple, there has been no functioning Sanhedrin. Many years ago, Hillel, there were a number of Hillels in Jewish history. Hillel the Elder is austerity. So today, even the hypermarket or kosher world or your favorite publish a calendar because we know in advance. But in English would be determined by a visual sighting of the moon, credible witnesses who would in fact be cross-examined, very intensely interrogated by these to make sure that they were telling the truth. So it's a short chapter. That's the good news. And it's so halacha 1. Chodesh Hashanah, lunar month. So the Jewish calendar is basically a lunar calendar. Way back in Egypt land, God appears to Moses and Aaron before the exodus and says to them, HaChodesh Hazeh Chodashim. This month of Nisan shall be the head of the month. So from this, we learned that the Jewish calendar will be a lunar calendar. And Rashi says that Hashem showed Moshe and Aaron the new moon, what it looks like, a brand new moon on day starting to show itself, right? The moon waxes and wanes from the 1st to the 15th of the Hebrew month, of the lunar month. It gets bigger and bigger. On the 15th, you have a full moon, and then it starts waning until the end of the month. You don't see a thing in the sky. And then from a new light, a new glimmer. So the year, but the months are, it says here, Deuteronomy 16, keep the month of spring. That means that Pesach has to be a spring festival. In Eretz Yisrael, Pesach is in the spring. But the climate and the seasons are controlled by the sun, not by the moon. If we had only an exclusively lunar calendar, within a few months, our lunar calendar and a solar calendar would get out of sync, and Pesach would no longer be exclusively in the spring in Israel, then start being in the summer, and then autumn. And the Torah says explicitly that Pesach must be a spring festival. So how do we do that? So for that, we introduce what we call a leap year. So although the Jewish calendar is primarily, basically a lunar calendar, it does have take into consideration the solar calendar as well, specifically the leap year. On the secular calendar and the solar calendar, what's a leap year? 1 day, the 12th of February. In the Jewish calendar, a leap year has a whole month. Before Pesach, we add another month. Of just having one Adar, we have 2 Adars. So we have Purim in Adar Sheni, Adar 2, followed after in Nisan. So we're adding basically 30 days, not 1 day of the 29th, but a whole month, 30 days, are being added to a Jewish calendar in a leap ubedet, literally a pregnant year. It's bigger than usual. So, the lunar year, 11 days. So, if the 165 days, we all know that. How long is a lunar calendar? 354 days. So if there's a gap of 11 days, you'll basically be over a month out of sync. And stop being in the spring. So we can't allow that to happen. So every now and then in our Jewish calendar, we have a leap year, which adds another month, 30 days, to the lunar calendar. Leap year of a whole month of Adar Sheni, we can make up years of the gap in the 11-day gap between solar and lunar calendars. Are you with me? You can nod your heads or you can unmute yourself. I just want to make sure I'm making sense. Are you all with me? Are we on the same page?
Yes, we are, Rabbi.
Yes, we are, Rabbi.
Thank you,
Yes,
thank you,
yes.
thank you.
Yes, we are.
So you can't just change the days, so you have to add a whole month. 3, the moon becomes hidden and cannot be seen for approximately 2 days, or slightly less or slightly more every month. Is that there's a possibility that a lunar month 9 days or 30 days. It cannot have 28, nor it cannot have 31. Of when is Rosh Chodesh is basically, is it on day 30 or day 31, so to speak. Now, the law said we have to wait for 2 courts in Jerusalem and tell the Sanhedrin, the Jewish Supreme Court, that they saw the first. They're testifying under oath, and they will be cross-examined. So, if no witnesses come, 4, when there are 29 days in a month, because the moon was sighted on the 30th night, the month is, meaning it's a short month, 29. If it has 30 days, it's called me'uba, pregnant, or mole. It's full, it's got 30 days. When the moon is sighted on the 30th night, the moon is going to be the appropriate time. Okay. Now, number 5. This is not the province of any and every individual. Let's say you're stuck on a shipwrecked on an island. You know that it's Tuesday. So you count Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and next Friday night is Shabbos. You need the Sanhedrin to tell you when it's Shabbos. But you do need the Sanhedrin in the old days anyway. You needed the Sanhedrin to tell you when it's Rosh Chodesh. Now, of Tevet, if we wouldn't know when Rosh Chodesh, okay, we would have a problem knowing when to keep the Rambam's yahrzeit, or anybody. But we wouldn't have a serious problem with not observing Yom Tov on the right day, because this month Yom Tovs. But it was Adar, in 2 months' time, we wouldn't know if we didn't know when Rosh Chodesh was, and we're stuck on an uninhabited island with no internet. And Nisan, we wouldn't know when to celebrate. Eat matzah on the 15th is a biblical commandment. But if you don't know when the first, and certainly Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur on the 10th of Tishrei, the first is, you don't know when the 10th is, and Sukkot on the 15th. So especially for critical to know when is Rosh Chodesh. So it could not be individual, it had to be done by the court. Not only the court, High Court, Supreme Court. And it has to be officially sanctified. They have to say Mikudash, it is sanctified. 3 times they say Mikudash, 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 it's sanctified. 6. Rabbis of the High Court would make calculations resembling the calculations of the astronomers, because the rabbis were not only expert in Torah, they were also knew when to expect the moon to make its appearance. They knew where in the sky it would make, and therefore they knew immediately if these witnesses were telling the, they would interrogate them and cross-examine them to make absolutely certain, but they knew, as well as rabbis. So if the judges determined that it was possible to sight the moon that night, they would sit waiting for the witnesses to come. If they came, they examined their testimony and verified the truth of their statements. They would then say, if no witnesses, then obviously it's not today, so clearly it'll be tomorrow. If they knew according that it's impossible to be cited today, that they wouldn't even bother waiting. They would know for a fact that they are false witnesses, they're liars. Or maybe they're just ignorant and the clouds appeared to them in a form resembling the moon, but because they knew as astronomers that they could not have seen the new moon today. So it could have been innocent ignorance. It also could have been liars and rebels and cynics. And there were plenty of troublemakers in Jewish history. Have you heard such stories? Jewish troublemakers today. We have self-hating Jews who give us a hard time, you know. But in those days, there were serious trouble, and they wanted to undermine the rabbi's announcement of when Rosh Chodesh was. Rabbis get the word out to the whole country. There's no WhatsApp, there's no internet. Pony Express. Okay, so they had the Pony Express, but they wouldn't wait till the Pony Express got to every far-flung community. Like the American Indians, smoke signals. You ever watch that smoke signals? You know where they got it from? They got it from the Sanhedrin. Everything's from the Torah. So the rabbis would organize closest to Jerusalem. Then the nearest mountain from there, the leaders there would see it, so they would make. Then the next mountaintop would see it, and they would make a fire, and so it would go. Everybody would see when, and that smoke signal meant that tonight is Rosh Chodesh. What happened? You had these troublemakers, these rebels, who started lighting fires on the mountaintop. Dafka and spite. So therefore, and eventually Hillel the elder prepared a calendar for posterity and sanctified the months for posterity. We have printed and published calendars and books of calendars for 120 years. You can get positive command of Torah for the court to calculate and determine whether or not the moon will be sighted, to examine the witness, and to send messages to inform all the people throughout the country when Rosh Chodesh was, so they know when to observe. Finally, number 8, the calculations only in Eretz Yisrael. The Sanhedrin exists in Israel. You know where the Sanhedrin sat? Obviously in Jerusalem. But where? Have you learned that yet in the Rambam? Jewish Supreme Court in Jerusalem. Do you know? Did you learn that yet?
No, I don't think so, Rabbi.
By the Machna Yehuda marketplace. It was its train station. It was on the Temple Mount. There was a chamber called the Chamber of Hewn Stones. And this stone chamber of the Sanhedrin, the Jewish Supreme Court, our constitutional court. And why? Because it says, Ki mitzion Torah udevar Hashem Yerushalayim, for out of Zion forth the Torah and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. So they were based in the great sages of Israel, a leading sage, and now he emigrated and he went to the diaspora for whatever reason. So the Smicha in Eretz Israel left for the diaspora without leaving a colleague of equal status in Israel, then he, the sage in the diaspora, established a month again and instituted leap years in the diaspora. So the Sanhedrin went to add an extra month. Today we know it's 7 years in the 9th cycle. The Jewish calendar operates in a 19-year cycle. 7 years are leap years with the 13th month. In the olden days, it would be every year by the Sanhedrin whether this year should be a leap year or not. In Adar, before Pesach. If, however, it becomes known to this great sage in the diaspora, now arisen in Eretz Israel, or surely even of a greater stature, then it to establish the monthly calendar or institute leap years. If it wishes and does so, it has no consequence, because the rule is it has to be done by the leaders in Jerusalem, and only if there is no qualified leader there, then. Okay, only 8 halachas. Any question?
Rabbi, Dave here.
Unmute yourself. Yes, Dave.
I read in the last couple of days, I don't even remember where it was. It was said that the lunar calendar was based on the Egyptian calendar, that they had already instituted it before the Exodus, apparently. I don't remember the exact.
I said earlier that Hashem appeared to Moses on Rosh Chodesh 2 weeks before the Exodus, and he said, HaChodesh has lochem Rosh Chodeshim. This month of Nisan shall be for you the to the months. And he showed it. And so the idea of a Jewish calendar being from the days of Moshe. What the Egyptians did, I really don't know, because it's not just a historical thing, it's a biblical, it's in fact one of the commandments of the Torah. So, in fact, the idea is that we got the mitzvah of the calendar before we got the rest. 7.5 weeks later at Mount Sinai. And the rabbis say, before we can sanctify any specific object, we have to learn to sanctify time itself. The calendar, time itself. And that precedes even the rest of the Torah. Of course, we got a few other mitzvahs in Egypt, like to make the path and matzah, etc.
Thank you.
Part, I'm just warning you that he's going to get a few chapters down to get into astronomical calculations. And I'm afraid I'm going to be out of my here in the audience. Any of you?
You need an actuary.
Yeah, that's
June, thank you very much. May
Thank
the
you, Rabbi.
fact that we
Thank you,
studied
Rabbi.
Rambam on his yard site be a blessing for his
Thank you.
Rabbi.
Amen. Amen.
May his
Amen.
merit
Thank you, Rabbi.
protect
Thank
all
you.
of us. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good learning.
Night.
Good night.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.